I was recently, someone shared a question that came from the Better Sax membership. Chad, a member there, who says that his saxophone has a sticky lower octave vent. He says that when he's cleaning the pads after a session, that he presses down the ring finger, the G key, and the octave key. And when he does that, a lot of times the vent doesn't immediately open. And when it doesn't open up very much, only about halfway up the pad. He's trying to get a picture of it, but he has a matte black session, so it's a little tricky for him to get a good video or photo of it. So I wanted to go ahead and address that and see if I can give you some guidance there, Chad. As we play the saxophone, the moisture builds up at the top end of the horn. You know, the closer to the mouth and the player, the more moisture there's going to be. So that lower octave pip, that can have more moisture there. But I'd make sure not to clean, you know, you definitely don't want to go through and clean your pads after every time you play. I don't personally do that. I could imagine if you went through and did that and I'm not saying you do, but just in case anyone does, if someone went through and like cleaned their pads with like the pad saver to get every bit of moisture off, I mean, that could wear the pads out over time. We definitely want to use these for keys that are always really wet after playing. So like I said, this upper octave pip pad, that could get a little moist, though it is a small hole there. But these palm key pads, you know, they usually get pretty moist after a long playing session. And then these work great for you know, sticky keys, for example. So let's take a look now at how the mechanism itself works. Now, the octave mechanism functions with the neck key. So if we take the neck key off, and to clarify, for those of you not sure what this key is, it's this octave key right here. It's this little tiny key here. Now, when you're playing from A with the octave key and above, we're going to be opening up the octave pip on the neck here. But if you have the octave key down from G sharp down to D, then we'll be using this octave pip here. Ideally, the saxophone would have 12 octave pips, and that would give us better intonation, hence the reason why most alto saxophones have a sharp middle D. Well, it's because of where we're having to make sacrifices in only having 2 octave pips. And there are saxophones that have been made with more than 2 octave pips. In fact, over at Music Medic, I remember hearing Kurt Alterac talk about how they made a neck with 12 pips on it. So, but just functionally, pretty challenging. Anyway, regardless, so that's what that key is. Now, if you're just after a playing session and you're just checking your keys and you're noticing that this key itself isn't opening up very much, you need to make sure that your neck is on, because this, you know, for example, if you are holding the saxophone like this and the weight of gravity is having this mechanism come down, then that's really not going to open up at all. You know, so I'm trying to show you there. You know, it's not going to open at all. But if you're like playing and practicing and you're noticing that there's an actual issue going on, then let's dive into that. So we want to make sure that we have the neck on the saxophone in order to ensure that the whole mechanism is functioning properly. So again, if it's only opening up a little bit when you're checking it, but you're holding it in a way, oops, I'm going to close that back down. You know, say it's sitting on your lap while you're doing this. Gravity can make it such that it's just not going to open at all. Okay, so the way to make sure that everything's functioning right is having the neck on. Now, there's a spring, a flat spring on this neck, and what it does is it pushes this part of the neck key downward. And that's really important because when we put down our ring finger and our octave key. It's that pressure from the neck key that keeps this lower octave pip opening. So, for example, if this key is sticking out too far this way, you know, it can be easy to bend these octave keys. So, you know, I'll exaggerate it, you know, if it's way up like that. So if it's been bent a little bit, oops, and it's, get it in a little closer, if it's kind of out like that, then what that would mean is that this key and the spring is not pushing this part of the octave mechanism in toward the body enough for that pip to fully open up. So that's the first place I would check. And that's another culprit. So one is, you know, we're just drying off our pads. We're having it sit on our lap while we dry those pads. And gravity is, and we don't have the neck on. And gravity is just keeping that key from opening. The next is if there's just too much of a gap between the neck octave key and this part of the mechanism. Now, we want to have a little bit of a gap, you know, because what ends up happening is if we don't have any gap and these are right up next to each other and there's no room for tolerance, then we can have the other problem, which is where this key, you know, gets stuck, gets stuck open, you know, so and sometimes it'll even look like it's closed, but when you play, and if it's challenging and you press down on it and then it's great, you know that this key is too far this way and it's causing there to be a little leak up at your upper octave pip. Now, this is a really easy fix, but you do want to be careful. It's also really common for saxophonists to deal with that. So in this case that Chad's dealing with, and I'm going to try to wrap this up soon because I'm probably taking too long, but if you know, if that lower octave pip is not opening enough, and just so you can see, Chad, here's how much it's opening and how much it should open. It should clear the entire pip. There shouldn't be a part of the pad that's still attached to the pip. It doesn't have to be a huge opening. We're just venting it enough, but it should completely clear the pip. So what you'd want to do is you can take your neck off, and you would press and hold the key here with one hand, and then with your other hand, you would apply pressure here. I'm not going to do it because this one's set up well, and you would simply push this key in. Now you can do it too much so that this key ends up being open. So you just want to do a little bit at a time, try it a little bit, put it back on, and then see if that vents it more. As long as it's clearing the pip, it should be fine. And again, you know, if it is a situation where you're just noticing it when you're like have the horn on your lap and the neck isn't on, and you're just kind of drying off some of the pads, then that could also be it. And if you're not noticing it while you play, I wouldn't worry too much. But those are going to be kind of the top culprits there. Let us know if this helps. All right, man. Take care.